Hey everyone, in this video we'll be marking some argument analysis essays, and I'll go over some of my feedback and thoughts to hopefully help you in this area. So let's get started. And just in case you were wondering, the reason I mark paragraphs rather than full essays is because if you make a mistake in one paragraph, it's likely that you might make similar errors in the other ones. So that's why I chose to focus on one paragraph only and offer some more specific feedback, and that way you can take that with you for your other paragraphs as well. So let's begin with this first paragraph for this article, which is on the impact of global warming on Australia. And it's broken up into these segments, which I cover in this video if you're unsure about what these are. So let's get started with the topic sentence. It is clear from the outset that Mullins intends to sympathetically outline the severe impact of global warming on Australia's bushland, wildlife, and communities, in an attempt to encourage skeptical readers to reconsider their opposition. So this is an excellent topic sentence because it contains 3 of the 4 essential things of a topic sentence. So you don't always need all 4, 3 is plenty enough. So for example, the tone here is sympathetic, the audience in this case is skeptical readers, the purpose, which is the intent in this case, is to outline the severe impact of global warming. And to improve on this, I think it's good to include the argument type. Now, this doesn't have to be a lot of words. You can just include it somewhere like here, and you could say Mullins' logical argument intends to sympathetically outline ... and then just continue with the rest of the sentence. So I think that's a nice addition, but it's not necessary if you mention it later on. And I'll just mention that this phrase here, from the outset, this is very important because it shows the assessor that you know where the argument is located. So yes, it is a bit of common sense, but even identifying these common areas is worth a lot in your essay because it shows that you are consciously identifying where and when an argument is positioned. So continuing on, strategically commencing with a photograph of a dust-coloured arid land in rural Australia, Mullins enforces the harsh impact of climate change to his sensitive readership, evincing the destructive force of nature can be unexpectedly dangerous. Awesome. So again, the strategically commencing shows the position of the argument, and this is a great example of how, what, why as well. So it follows the structure quite nicely, and especially the why part, which is all of this. And also note that this student has specified what the readers are, so not just readership, but rather sensitive readership. And just being this tiny bit specific adds a lot of value to your piece. Then they go on to focus on a specific aspect of the image, so over here, and it follows the same structure as well. So you can have a read of that, but I like this because it covers the broad implications of the image first, and then it focuses on a specific detail. So you can definitely do that for your images, begin with like a broad statement, and then go into more detailed explanations. Then moving on, I think a joining phrase here would be quite good. So something like augmenting his stance, comma, Mullins' immediate establishment of himself as a rural fire service volunteer is designed to bolster his credibility and evoke sympathy on the topic of climate change consequence. And then that persuades doubtful readers that his arguments are worth considering. So I think we can add that there. And one thing that I'll point out here is this part about the sympathy. Since I haven't read the entire article, I'm not sure exactly how this fits in, but just from reading the quote here, this is probably more of a credibility thing than it is a sympathy thing. So I think we can leave this part of the sentence out, and we'll see if that fits in later on. And then the second half of this sentence is a great example of why, and to make this even better, I think we can make this analysis a bit more specific to the quote. Since our quote is rural fire service volunteer, we can kind of make this sentence a bit more tailored towards that quote. So rather than saying something generic, such as his arguments are worth considering, I think it's good to say something like, his arguments are worth considering because the author appears to have first-hand experiences of the dangers of bushfires. So it is something subtle, but it shows that you're tailoring your essay towards a specific quote, which is always good. And moving on, so I quite like the joining phrase here to further prove his validity, so this is great. And then continuing on, Mullins frustratingly recounts his experiences of deployment as a fire rescue commissioner, having to witness 30-meter walls of flame and homes burned to the ground, which amplifies the severity of climate change with vivid, ominous imagery. So, first thing to note here is that this student has broken up the quotes into shorter segments, and these are called run-along quotes. And this is a quite effective way of writing essays because it avoids these long stretches of quotes, which doesn't really make your writing sound that smooth. So if you can, try to break out these longer quotes into these small and digestible sections. And in fact, you know how we mentioned about sympathy above? This is a great place to talk about sympathy because if you read the quotes here, these two clearly try to elicit some form of sympathy from the readers. And I think this is a better example of where sympathy is trying to be used rather than just the quote above, where we just have something to do with credibility. But this is great just as it is. And then moving on, by using the oxymoronic phrase of trying to console the inconsolable residents, the author reinforces his experience of despair with unfortunate communities, thus encouraging compassionate demographics to take his stance on the argument. So really great analysis here again. I can clearly see the how, what, why structure being followed very well. And just one thing, it's kind of a similar thing to before, but just with this part, try to be a bit more specific than just saying take his stance on the argument. And it's actually a really easy fix. All you need to do is to add that and then specify what the argument is. So for example, thus encouraging compassionate demographics to take his stance on the argument that bushfires are dangerous. So just something specific to the actual topic. But yeah, awesome analysis there. And then finishing off with the link, evidently, Mullen's use of personal credibility and experience is engineered to engender a strong emotional response from the forefront of the piece, coaxing unsure audiences into understanding the dangerous consequence of global warming. So really great there. It ties together the argument, audience, and purpose very nicely. So overall, great paragraph here. In terms of what the student did well, the structure, so the how, what, why, is on point. There is a great focus on the audience, and the word count here, which you actually can't see, but I have this on a Word document, and it comes to about 250 words, which is ideal for an argument analysis essay. And also, another thing that this student does well is that the analysis is quite detailed and sophisticated. And in terms of improvements, I think being more specific is an area that they can work on. That isn't a very major issue, and it can be fixed very easily. And the next thing is to include something about the argument type. So is it a logical argument or an emotional argument? Having a phrase like that in your essay makes it stand out. But overall, I think with these fixes, I see no reason why this can't get a 9 or even higher mark on the exam. 9 out of 10 that is. Awesome, so let's have a look at the second submission. And this one is on the 2019 exam, and that was a comparative argument analysis, so 2 articles. So let's have a look at the topic sentence. Great topic sentence, it has all those 4 things. Just missing the target audience, but that's not too much of an issue since it's probably going to be mentioned later on. It's a bit clunky if you try to add that in, especially for a comparative argument analysis. So that's why I recommend only having 3 out of the 4. So to commence her piece, Astaire directly addresses valued customers in an attempt to dichotomize the readership into 2 groups. And then what this does is it makes one group feel really valued, and it makes the other group feel like they're lacking this value. So this is actually a very good example of connotative analysis. So the student here is focusing on the specific word valued and how that affects the audience and how that is meant to be persuasive. So this analysis is very specific because it shows how the author is trying to make more customers convert to her store by portraying this as some form of inner circle group that are being valued and treated differently to just normal customers. Alright, and then this notion is reinforced through the photograph of Astaire greeting a customer. And then the relative sizing of Astaire versus the customer shows how this store prioritizes customers. So great how, what, why, and the analysis of the image is definitely on point. Additionally, Astaire's modest clothing portrays her as local and amicable, lulling skeptical readers who may immediately view Astaire's advertorial as enshrouded by economic motives. So, great job for identifying what the form of the piece is, advertorial. That's very important. It's not always opinion piece. And one thing I will note here is that this part, the way I interpreted this was that skeptical readers might realize what the true economic motives are. Now, that is probably correct, but in this case, for argument analysis, we're trying to say how the argument is meant to be effective. In this case, it's kind of saying that the argument might not be effective. So I think just to make this clearer, what we can say is lulling skeptical readers to reject the fact that Astaire's advertorial is enshrouded by economic motives. So kind of saying the reverse here. And then this second half makes sense because it shows how this image is trying to portray Astaire as someone who is friendly rather than someone who's only concerned about profit. Yeah, great analysis here. Just that one sentence that might need a bit of fixing or a bit of clarification, but that's it. Alright, Astaire's reoccurring use of "as you know" implies that her claims are presumed knowledge and obvious, thereby impelling more self-conscious audiences to immediately accept the claim, so as to not feel oblivious. So very good how, what, why. And just to make it even better, we can specify what the claim is. So like before, we can just say, accept the claim that her store is superior, just to make it slightly more specific to the actual text. And then moving on, additionally, Astaire hubristically cites her implementation of changes long before the big stores, creating a dissonant juxtaposition between her local and authentic business with immense conglomerates, had to search up the pronunciation of that one, which may carry connotations of rapacity and amorality within skeptical readers. Awesome, so this is another use of connotations, which is great. This coaxes these apprehensive audience members to side with Astaire and her voracious attempts to make her business community focused. So this is great because this is more specific than before, where it was just accept the claim. So great here. Augmenting this, Astaire cites her motives, which were wanted and needed, in an attempt to portray herself as a maternal figure. So this is very good because it shows how you're unpacking the actual words here and the underlying message behind the phrase wanted and needed. So great for identifying that this is typical of a maternal figure as something that kind of comforts and takes care of their customers. So very good. And then the next text, so in a like-minded attempt to augment his credibility, Morricone establishes his role as a customer of the shop. So he employs a resentful tone, characterizing the shop owner as dishonest and avaricious. Now it might be good to merge this sentence with the other one since it's quite short, but I'll leave that up to you. His rhetorical question, who is she kidding, not only subverts Astaire's credibility, but carries parental undertones much like Astaire's maternal diction, thereby augmenting her ethos. I think Morricone's a guy, so maybe his, but that's just a small detail. So it's really good how you're comparing the wording in one article is similar to the wording in another article. So very specific and very good here. And another thing that I don't think I mentioned before is when you're comparing between two texts, try to avoid just saying similarly or contrastingly, and rather specify what exactly is similar or what exactly is different. So in this case, it's the attempt to build up one's credibility. That's the thing that's the same. So that's very good. And then hence Astaire voraciously attempts to assert her business as one that is community orientated, whereas Morricone scathingly rebukes Astaire, labeling her as untrustworthy. Awesome link. So overall, this does really well with the connotations and unpacking of individual words. And the structure of the how, what, why is also very great and very clear. And also the argument type is mentioned, I think, yep, at the top. So that is awesome to see. And in terms of improvements, this paragraph might be slightly on the longer end, so it kind of depends how fast you write, but I generally recommend that you cut it down to 300 words. So currently it's sitting at 361, and if you just take out this section, let me find it. Yeah, this section, it will cut down the essay length to around 300 words, which is perfect for a comparative argument analysis, because these ones generally become much longer than these single essays. So I think 300 for a comparative is optimal. And then just two minor things. First thing is to just make sure some of the logic is correct. So everything here is meant to support the author in one sense, or why the argument is effective. And also try to be specific to the actual argument. So in this case, try to avoid general claims, such as this one, but that's an easy fix anyways. So both of these paragraphs with these minor fixes are close to the 9+ range. So that's really awesome stuff to see. So hope that was helpful, everyone, and I'll definitely be doing some more of these in the future.